كبير.
It's a magic place. My name is Simon Espley. I'm a director of the Rare Finch Conservation Group. We are a non-government organisation as well as a public benefit organisation, which means we are recognised by the tax authorities as a bona fide charity.
In 2005, 9 highly dedicated finch enthusiasts founded the Rare Finch Conservation Group.
During the startup phase of RFCG, we had to identify a finch that we could associate with, that we could use as our sort of flagstone species, as it were. And the Crimsonwings is a family of finches that are little known, little understood. They occur exclusively in Africa. There are 4 of them, the dusky, the Shelleys, the red-faced and the Abyssinian. And the Shelleys is a CITES 1 bird, which means, according to the IUCN, there's imminent threat of extinction in the wild, which means that the bird is under severe threat, it's data deficient, and we'd like to get involved there and see if we can help. So we have established a project in Uganda, which is in Central Africa, in an area known as the Albertine Rift, which has a lot of endemic bird species, of which Shelley's is one. Of course, the main difference between the mountain gorilla and the Shelley's Crimsonwing is that more is known about the mountain gorilla. It is well researched from the days of Dian Fossey in Rwanda all the way through to now. There are lots of teams pursuing the mountain gorilla, researching, analysing what's going on, protecting it. Now, Shelley's Crimsonwing can't say the same thing. It's a data deficient bird. Not much is known about it. And it's not quite as sexy as the mountain gorilla either from a tourism point of view. So that's what turns us on. We like a challenge.
BirdLife International and the IUCN Red Data Book lists the Shelley's Crimsonwing as one of the rarest finches in Africa. It is listed as vulnerable. Likely population, 2,500 to 9,999. Yet when the Rare Finch Conservation Group was founded in August 2005, it could not find a single photographic reference of a Shelley's Crimsonwing finch. The Burundi Impenetrable National Park is 320 square kilometers in size. It is a tropical rainforest, and it is not only home to 340 odd of the estimated 680 threatened mountain gorillas left in the world, but it is also purportedly home to all 4 of the Crimsonwing finches, namely the Abyssinian Crimsonwing, the red-faced Crimsonwing, the dusky Crimsonwing, as well as the threatened and elusive Shelley's Crimsonwing finch. For 2 years after the formation of the Rare Finch Conservation Group, the RFCG was still unable to find a single photographic reference of the Shelley's Crimsonwing finch. Even the illustrated references seen in many of the field guides and reference books often show dramatically different visuals from one another. Here you see the cockbird illustrated in bright colours. Here it is shown in a very dull colour. The RFCG then created its own website and invited visitors to submit whatever they knew about the appearance of the Shelley's Crimsonwing finch. The multi-award-winning magazine Africa Birds and Birding, who are the media sponsors to the Rare Finch Conservation Group, also ran an advertisement calling for readers to submit photographs of the finch, and still, nothing was forthcoming. In the end, the RFCG, based on all known available information, prepared its own illustration of the bird, which was used for PR purposes. Finally, in 2007, these dramatic museum skins were tracked down. The first is of a Shelley's Crimsonwing cockbird, and the second skin is of a hen bird. They were photographed by Lorraine Rolfe and submitted by the Durban Natural History Museum in South Africa. These visuals were used in a worldwide advertising campaign to help raise awareness of the rarity of the Shelley's Crimsonwing finch and to generate much-needed funding to embark on a Phase 1 field study in the Burundi Impenetrable Forest up in Uganda. In 2008, the world's first photographic reference of a live Shelley's crimsonwing was found on the gorilla organization website, www.gorilla.org. This male bird was netted in February 2008 during a bird survey of an annex of the Virunga National Park in DR Congo. The next step was for the RFCG to consult East Africa's leading bird ringer and bird guide trainer, Malcolm Wilson, who now lives in Johannesburg, to find out what he knows about the Shelley's crimsonwing finch.
Dusky. These Mackworth Pride Shelleys, Rwenzori Mountains, Western Uganda. So it's on the Rwenzori as well. So these two guys, Mackworth Prade and Grant, were two brothers in the British Army, and it seemed like on their weekends they jumped into probably an old Triumph Herald or something, or Hillman, and just drove all over East Africa, and they came up with these fantastic old books, and even today they're still an amazing work of art. They're like, they recorded really very beautifully all the different yellow wagtail races, this Palearctic species. And Shelley's, it says, distinguishing characters, general distribution, Virunga volcanoes in the Congo, on the eastern Belgian Congo, to the Rwenzori Mountains, Uganda, range in eastern Africa, Rwenzori and western Uganda. Habitats, another shy species of dense forest undergrowth, rarely seen and diving into an impenetrable jungle as soon as it's disturbed. Nothing is known of its life history. Eggs undescribed. Breeding, no records. Food, small seeds. That's a finch. It's called a series of twittering notes rising and falling, which is interesting. So they heard it call.
Now let's hear what Malcolm's own experience was when looking for the Shelley's crimsonwing.
In the time I've ringed in the Albertine Rift, in Rwanda included, I've caught something like probably 18, 19 Albertine Rift endemic species, none of which have been Shelley's crimsonwing, which is an interesting thing, I think, because in all the hours and days and weeks of misnet hours I've spent catching birds in the Albertine Rift, I've never seen a Shelley's crimsonwing in the net. I've only ever seen one, and that was in another park called Magahinga National Park, which is a beautiful park in the confluence of the three volcanoes where they converge between Congo, Rwanda and Uganda. And there's a high altitude bamboo zone, which is what little is known about Shelley's crimsonwing. It does like the bamboo, although the only one I have seen wasn't in bamboo, but there again it's an inexplicably rare bird, and there's a lot of questions that can be asked and answered by finding out a little bit more about such a species as Shelley's. I think it could be a natural bottleneck, why it's so rare, why it's not seen so often. Why is it actually rare? Is there a problem to cause its scarcity? We don't know.
Now let's hear some of Malcolm's insights regarding his field and training experiences in Uganda.
I took on several trainers, field assistants, to teach how to ring, using mist nets, fitting rings. And from that we progressed with the European Union and the Uganda Wildlife Education Centre. We had a training program that I started a nationwide guide training program that worked in the 10 national parks. And one of the best tools for guide training is in fact mist netting and ringing birds. So you're catching birds in the hand, very difficult to identify or see even, small skulking brown LBJs in thicket. Suddenly in the hand you can have a real good look at these things. This was a great tool for showing people a bird whose call was very familiar to them, but the actual bird itself was the first time some of these guys had ever seen one of these birds in the hand, but the call was very familiar to them. So that was a great thing of putting the call to the bird, which helped a lot. I then founded the Uganda Bird Guides Association with the Uganda Tourist Board. That was in the late 90s. Today you've got a very strong, very good infrastructure for bird watching visitors to that country. You're never short of a bird watching guide or driver guide that doesn't know at least most of the top 20 birds an avid bird watcher would like to go and see in Uganda, from shoebill to Shelley's Crimsonwing.
No one really knows a hell of a lot about the bird. There's some bird watchers in the area that say that they've seen the bird. We know of one fellow who bird watches twice a day with tourists, and he's seen it 3 times in 20 years. So we knew we had our work cut out for us. Phase 1, which we commenced in 2007, was to really do some interim trapping and find out whether Shelley's does occur in that Rhodesia area. We didn't have a lot of funds in those days, so we had to be very modest so we begged, borrowed and stealed. We had lucky enough to find an MSc student who was at the tail end of his studies, and he tailored his program to help us. Phase 1, the results of Phase 1 are really that we found absolutely no Shelleys, Crimsonwings. We trapped a number of duskies and red-faced Crimsonwings, but no Shelleys, sadly. But that helped us realize the enormity of what we're taking on. It's a very elusive bird, it's a very small bird, the forest is very thick. This is not an easy task. Phase 2 now, after Phase 1, we then went out and managed to secure funding. We are extremely grateful to the Hans Hoheisen Charitable Trust, which is a South African trust set up by a gentleman. When he died, he donated money for projects to do with African species under threat. We're extremely grateful that they've given us the funding for Phase 2. And Phase 2 commenced in mid-2009, is now a much more detailed census of the area. First of all, of the Rhodesia area in Burundi, and then moving to other areas of Burundi that we will highlight as we go. And if no luck there, we do have other areas in Uganda, the DRC and Rwanda that we will target. Our key logistical partner on the ground in Burundi is the Institute of Tropical Forestry Conservation, or ITFC.
What do we actually call it? The monthly contribution to ITFC or so, which is very much assuming that someone will make use of our library, recharging of things, internet particularly.
The ITFC's education centre and other facilities are available for hire by tourists and others. Its basic but very functional facilities also offers dormitories kindly donated by the World Wildlife Fund.
And without their help, we'd be pretty lost. They give us logistical support, local knowledge, and they're flexible enough that when we need a number of their resources, particularly their guides and their field assistants, they're vital in our plans. One of the pros from Phase 1 was that we identified our main man on the ground. Other than the MSc student, there was a great guy by the name of Benson Bamatura. Fantastic energy, fantastic birder. He knows the areas very well. He's very dedicated, and he now heads up our Phase 2.
We asked Benson for how many years he had been birding.
It is now started in 2002, and it's almost 7 years.
And how many species he had identified on his life list.
Yeah, my life is now 720 bird species.
And how many calls can he recognize?
I can identify like 500 by calls.
Which is his favorite bird?
They are Shelleys and green-breasted pittas.
We also asked him if he had ever seen the Shelley's Crimsonwing.
I saw it once in Mugahinga. It was 2005.
This is what Benson had to say when he was shown the Shelley's Crimsonwing photos sourced from the internet.
Sure, the colors, they are not clear like the one which I saw. Yeah, but the one which I saw, it had very clear colors.
We asked Benson if he had ever ringed birds and who taught him how to net birds.
One was Morcom. He was a bird observatory in Queen Elizabeth National Park in Uganda. Then the second group, they were from WCS, Rare Finch Conservation Society. And that guy who was heading the group, he was called Isaiah.
And the third person that Benson had netted birds with was Andrew Okama, the MSc student from Kampala University. We asked if he had ever drawn blood from birds.
Yes, for sure. I had a student. She was coming from America. She was doing her PhD in weaver birds and green bulls. So we did it for 18 months. I was even getting the blood from the nestlings, getting the blood from the old one, checking the eggs. Yeah, we normally get the bird and we look under its wing. We get a small nerve. We have a sharp thing. We just pin there on the nerve. We have things that they are calling them scapular tube. So we suck a little bit of blood. As we got blood, then we cover it with cotton where it is breeding. So we first keep it until it stops breeding, then we let it go and we work on the blood.
And what does he do with the bird when it lands in the net?
Yeah, removing it from the net, we normally start with legs. Once the legs are out, then everything is very easy to get out, the wings and the neck. Legs. If you start with other parts, it will get entangled and you will end up breaking its wings or legs.
The next step was to send RFCG Director Eelco Meyjes to Uganda to kickstart the second phase of fieldwork. Camping kit and specialist bird netting equipment was taken up to Uganda from South Africa. Uganda, with its estimated population of 32 million people, is sometimes referred to as the Pearl of Africa, and it is approximately the same size as Great Britain. The 450-kilometre trip from Kampala to Kabale, which is the last town before the Burundi impenetrable forest, takes about 6 to 7 hours to travel. 85% of Uganda's population is rurally based, and electricity is seldom available to them. The need for wood and charcoal as an energy source understandably poses a major threat to the natural habitat of the country. Mobile phones can be used in nearly all areas of Uganda. Taxi bicycles or small taxi motorbikes called boda bodas is a very popular form of public transport in the busy towns. Whilst English is the main spoken language, there are some 33 indigenous languages. Bicycles are often used to transport goods and produce such as charcoal to the small village markets. Kabale is the last major town before one travels to the Burundi impenetrable forest. Vital supplies such as fuel, batteries and fresh food must all be purchased here before heading off to the forest. There are only 2 roads to the tropical rainforest, and this particular road to the Indigo Gate is the least used. When wet, it can make access to the park very challenging and requires a 4x4 vehicle. Most of the people that live around the Burundi impenetrable forest today are subsistence farmers. Rapid growth in the local population naturally places an ever-increasing demand for agricultural land and is a serious environmental threat to the forest. Whilst the men are often involved with pit sawing or platform sawing in order to build homes for their families and the community, and sometimes enjoy jobs outside the home. The women, who often bear lots of children over the years, are normally required to do all the hard manual farm labour on the small hillside subsistence farms. Being next to a tropical rainforest means that virtually anything that is planted will grow. This scenario naturally provides a major threat for the wildlife habitat in the area. All this that you can see was at one stage tropical rainforest. And as short as 500 years ago, the world's two main tropical rainforests, that of all the threatened mountain gorillas, were still connected as one forest. Seeing this dramatic contrast for the first time between the Burundi impenetrable forest and the agricultural crops must be one of the most frightening visual demonstrations in the world of habitat loss. The Ugandan wildlife authorities have now planted eucalyptus trees along the edge so that the locals cannot keep encroaching on the border without the park authorities noticing it. Burundi impenetrable forest is considered to be one of the most important forests in Africa. This is because a number of its plant and animal species are endemic, and many are threatened with global extinction. There are no less than 350 bird species that can be seen at Burundi, of which 43 of them are finch species. Being on the equatorial belt, Burundi doesn't have a summer and a winter season, but it has two dry seasons, namely December to January, and again from June to August. And the real wet season is from March to April, and again from September to November. At 2,500 meters above sea level, this is one of the highest points of the Burundi impenetrable forest, and very much an area where one would expect to see the Shelley's crimsonwing finch. The Burundi impenetrable forest interior is only accessible on foot, although there is this one road which goes along the eastern boundary of the tropical rainforest. When one looks back from the gate, one sees how the agricultural crops butt right up to the forest edge. As mentioned earlier, the Burundi impenetrable forest is only 322 square kilometers in size. By way of comparison, the Kruger National Park in South Africa is 18,000 square kilometers. The forest has more than 120 species of mammals, of which 10 are primates. It is the only forest in Africa where one can see both threatened mountain gorillas as well as chimpanzees. And it has more than 300 butterfly species and 320 odd tree species. Being a tropical rainforest means that it can rain at any time of the day and at any time of the year. Gorillas are primarily vegetarians, and amongst other things, they enjoy eating bamboo shoots, which is the very same plant that the threatened Shelley's finch reportedly chooses as its primary habitat. This solitary road in the forest leads to the two tiny villages both on the border of the impenetrable forest. Ruhija, at 2,340 meters above sea level, is high up in the misty mountains. And Buhoma is one of the lowest points, at 1,600 meters above sea level, which is where the park's headquarters are and where the main entrance is. Most of the gorilla tracking is done from the village of Buhoma. The road from Indigo Gate to the tiny village of Ruhija on the southeastern border of the park is extremely scenic. The tiny village of Ruhija is where some of the park rangers live, and the Ugandan Wildlife Authority in 2009 celebrated the year as the Year of the Gorilla. Very few tourists ever travel to Ruhija, whilst it is practically inaccessible without a private vehicle. It is certainly one of the most beautiful and undiscovered places in Uganda. It is one of the few places in Uganda where all 4 crimsonwing finch species are purportedly present. Looking west, one can see in the distance the Virunga volcanoes on the Rwandan border. And looking from the Ruhija village campsite, it offers some of the most spectacular sunsets, overlooking hundreds of forest ridges of the Burundi impenetrable forest. Rhodesia is also the home of the Institute of Tropical Forest Conservation, the ground partners in Uganda of the Rare Finch Conservation Group. The ITFC provide administrative, computer, transport and basic accommodation needs for the RFCG. And nowadays they also have small budget guest houses, ideal for international birders and gorilla trekkers that have started to visit the area.
Now, our man on the ground for Phase 2, Benson Bamatura, fantastic guy, a huge range of skills that are very relevant for us. When I met him in Phase 1, I was very impressed with him, and I came back to the guys, to the RFCG guys, and said, I think we need him for Phase 2. What I didn't realize was that he had a lot of skills that I just took for granted. And so at the beginning of Phase 2, when Eelco Meyjes went to Rhodesia to get the program going, he spent probably 3/4 of his time educating Benson about particularly communication and how to use the things that we take for granted. For example, GPSs.
When ringing birds, it is important to record the GPS coordinates of the exact location of each bird netted. Knowing the altitude at which it resides is also very important research data. When renetting the same bird at a later stage, it helps to establish the flight distances and range of each species. And depending on the time frame when the bird is renetted, it can also sometimes help to determine the approximate life expectancy of the species.
They have changed now,
Changed what?
the elevation.
Okay, what's the elevation now?
It is 2430.
And where was it before?
It was 2293.
Okay, then cancel everything and start again.
Okay.
In other words, shut down.
Okay.
You're not, just close it.
I switched on again.
Yes. You scroll to,
Yes.
go down the menu.
So now it's mark. I go to where?
You go to mark.
I enter the mark.
Yes, enter mark.
Okay. Yeah, they have come. It is 24337 now.
That's the right one. Also with time you'll get to know the elevations of the different areas, so you'll know if it's a mistake or not.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? The more you work in this area, the more you'll know it will always be about 2-4 something.
Yeah.
And what Simon was saying is that last time he was here, you were trapping at about 2-2 and he wanted to go higher this time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we're now in the bamboo.
Yes. Bamboo zone.
Yes, bamboo zone. Excellent.
We hadn't realized that although he can read and write, he actually cannot work on a computer. And so we had to organize how he would write down all of the results of his research, give them to the ITFC, who would then send them to us via email. So there are all sorts of things, even to do with taking photographs of birds. He had to be taught how to use the camera, how to zoom in, how to use the flash, when not to use the flash, which is most of the time, to be frank. And so there were lots of things we had to teach Benson that we in the first world kind of took for granted, and personally I never really thought of the first time I met the guy. His enthusiasm is so strong. He's a fantastic birder. He's probably one of the best bird watchers that I've ever walked with. And so I kind of took the rest for granted, and we now know that he had shortcomings in his skills that luckily Eelco spotted, and he's managed to upskill Benson, which is exciting for Benson and for us.
Nice.
Okay, now Benson, now switch it on and take that. Is it on?
Yeah, it's off now for itself.
Is it? Okay, now I want you to take that mountain.
The Far Mountain.
Yes, the one that you like. Okay, wait for the light to come right. Go. Okay, and that cloud, I want you to take that nice cloud. Okay, and then you hold it steady. Press. Okay, no, you've pressed the camera off. You pressed the wrong button.
Oh, I'm sorry then.
Okay, hold on. All right, now wait and press. Okay, press that button there. All right, and go to the right a little bit. And you want that nice mountain?
Right.
Okay, just wait. Okay, Benson, just wait. Good. Okay. Portrait, you go up. You push that one up. Yes? Okay, now wait. Now you can take this plant. Take this close-up plant here. All right? Yes. Okay? Yes. All right? And press. I want you to film. Take this photograph here. Okay? Okay, and then take this one over here.
Which one?
Take this one.
This one here.
Okay? Because we're now going to be photographing crimsonwings. Okay? Hold it steady. Hold it steady. Photograph.
Photograph?
Press. Okay. And what do you enjoy about it?
In fact, everything I didn't know that you press there for the landscape, for the portrait. So now I have come to know.
Did it give you trouble at all, your camera?
Yeah, it was still new to me. I have never used it.
Here you see some of the wonderful photographs taken by Benson over the very many months. Plus, of course, some action shots of the threatened mountain gorillas that sometimes wander through the campsites. Setting up the mist nets at times will take place well before sunrise. And for safety reasons, a game ranger is required every time Benson and his team go out mist netting. Pangas are used to cut open the bamboo and dense forest undergrowth. The long ultralight nets are fixed to the poles and pushed into the soft, damp soil of the tropical rainforest. Whilst the rangers are constantly present, everyone knows exactly what they have to do. And GPS readings are taken for each netting area. Having the nets up well before sunrise often helps to net the birds when they start looking for their early morning seed supply. Doing a final check of all the nets before leaving them for the birds is always necessary.
When you are moving a bird, you first look where it has entered. The key it entered, it was coming from these ends. Yeah. You see, guys?
Benson also enjoys teaching all his field assistants about the various netting skills.
So you start with the legs, very carefully.
When one is randomly netting birds, it can be expected that a wide variety of small birds other than finches will also be trapped in the nets.
Then now you go to the wings. Now the bird is out. This
is a white-starred robin. The white-starred robin, or white-throated robin, as the locals sometimes refer to it, has tiny white spots in front of its eyes, and the one on its breast is often concealed.
So you make sure that when you are grabbing it, you don't grab the legs here, you go on the sides. If it tries to move, then it will not break its legs. So you let him go.
Yeah.
So when you are releasing a bird, it's not good to throw it. maybe it's weak and you end up killing it. So what you do, just do like this. Instead of throwing it, just put it somewhere here. You see now it's tired. If you try to do what? Throw it, you can kill it.
Life for the locals living on the edge of the impenetrable forest is not always easy. There's virtually no public transport. This truck travels once a day from the forest to Kabali to transport produce from the land bordering the forest and to take the sick to the clinic. It returns to the forest again in the late afternoon. If you look carefully, you will notice that there are no children on it. The cost is simply unaffordable for their parents. And in Africa, with any form of public transport, there is always room for one more load. Even though the nearest town of Kabali is only 50-odd kilometers away, some children living on the edge of the forest have never been there. Mist nets are sometimes set up along pathways because small birds will often use open pathways as easy flight areas when searching for food and partners. Most of the locals are Christians, and religion plays a very important role in these tiny forest edge communities. From a very young age, children are required to help their parents with their basic survival needs. Wood is collected every day to provide both warmth and light at night. Water needs to be collected for cooking and drinking.
You fetching water?
And often the young children have to walk long distances to fetch the water. Wood is also used in many innovative ways to make things such as kitchen utensils and even children's toys. The Burundi impenetrable forest and its natural waters is a lifeline to these very small communities. It is also the lifeline to the threatened mountain gorillas, as well as to the elusive Shelley's Crimsonwing finch.
You see.
The constant conflict of the natural world and the needs of the local communities are forever present. And here you see a magnificent silverback mountain gorilla. These gorillas are often the leaders of the group. In recent years, the Ugandan Wildlife Authority and the International Gorilla Conservation Program, along with the World Wildlife Fund and the various local governments along the forest edge, have done an enormous amount of good work amongst the local communities to educate them about the immediate and future benefits of protecting the forest resource and its critically endangered mountain gorillas. Children from a very young age, filled with pride, are made aware of the conservation importance of the mountain gorillas living in the area.
So who's making the gorillas and how much is that one? That's a silverback?
Yeah.
Sure. Nice, eh?
10% of all the monies received from selling gorilla trekking permits is used by the Ugandan government to construct schools and clinics along the forest edge. Here you see a large public road sign targeted to the locals thanking the gorillas for bringing in the tourists as they drive through villages past clinics and schools. It is the vision of the Rare Finch Conservation Group to help educate the local communities about the many magnificent finches to be seen in their forest, and in particular about the rarity of the Shelley's Crimsonwing finch. Travelling the 42 kilometres from the village of Rahija, where the ITFC is based, at 2,340 metres above sea level, down to the village of Bahama, requires a 4x4 vehicle. This is the main road in Bahama. As mentioned earlier, most of the gorilla trekking starts from this tiny village. And many of the world-class tourist lodges, both upmarket, which are beautifully appointed and offer international cuisine, and middle market tented camps, which are comfortable and well serviced. And basic campsites can be found here. Bahama is also where the Burundi Impenetrable National Park's headquarters are, and Benson needs to visit them from time to time to sort out all the required netting permits for the RFCG, to try and find the elusive Shelley's Crimsonwing finch. In the same way that the demise of the threatened mountain gorilla was identified so many years ago, and today has been rescued from possible extinction, so too the Rare Finch Conservation Group would like to raise the international awareness and try and save the threatened Shelley's Crimsonwing finch from possible extinction. Planning the netting locations each day with the team is discussed before the cutting of the forest undergrowth takes place. Given that the Shelley's Crimsonwing likes to habitat the high altitude areas, Benson does all his netting work above 2,000 meters above sea level. Transport for Benson and his team to the various netting sites is kindly provided to the RFCG by the Institute of Tropical Forest Conservation. Nets are set up in the early mornings and then taken down again at 10 a.m. each day. In the afternoon, nets are once again set up at 4 p.m. and taken down again just after sunset. Once the nets are set up, Benson and his team will leave the nets and return every 15 to 20 minutes to check to see if any birds have been netted. When a bird is netted, it is of paramount importance for the field team to work quickly and efficiently and ensure the bird has the minimum amount of stress. Here you see Benson rapidly moving around the side from where the bird entered the net. This is a dusky crimsonwing finch. According to many of the reference books, dusky crimsonwing finches are often found in the same areas as the Shelley's crimsonwings. There are no dusky crimsonwing finches either in the wild or in captivity in South Africa. As seen here, Benson works with the utmost care and patience.
So when we are having them,
Yes.
we make sure that we don't squeeze.
Yes.
This one looks a female because the male has got much red
Yes.
on its head.
Okay.
And you can see you don't see much red. Red starts from it. Could be the female.
Yes. Okay.
Want me to grab the shells and
This way.
just wait.
The bird is photographed.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Now you've got to photograph it against the paper
Yeah,
with the number.
With the ring.
Okay. All right.
A leg ring with the number is attached to its leg.
Now somebody must write the number down. Yeah, don't worry, just press.
You just press.
Yeah. You got your camera on extra close up.
Yeah?
You got your camera on extra close up,
It's in two flowers.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so that's extra close up.
GPS coordinates are recorded. Measurements are taken.
This is 5.2. That is 4 centimeter. I think we are done now.
Yes, so you can release it.
And it is then gently released back into the wild.
One of the things we're also doing, apart from our in situ research in Uganda, is we've started a parallel breeding project here in South Africa amongst the RFCG members, and we've chosen the red-faced Crimsonwing. The idea is to get to know the bird, to get to understand it, what makes it tick. Now, the reason we're doing that is that we feel it will give us a better understanding of what makes the birds, that group of finches, tick in the wild. It's not to try and sort of breed up huge numbers and eventually release them back in Uganda. That would be not necessary. But it is to get to know the bird well. And around the world, there have been a number of occasions where aviculturalists have played a very central role in the establishing of captive bred populations of very rare birds, and where necessary and where scientifically supported, the release of those birds. The Gerald Durrell Institute of Jersey has a number of projects which they used to conduct in Jersey itself, but now they tend to do them in situ. And probably the sort of the leading light in that regard would be their Mauritian projects, where they played a very strong role in the re-establishment of the pink pigeon, the Mauritius kestrel, and the echo parakeet. Now, we don't know at this stage what Shelley's Crimsonwing will need, whether an in situ or an in South Africa breeding program is necessary and what the benefits would be. But we do know that getting to know the Crimsonwing in captivity now is essential, and that's what we're all doing. So we've all sourced some red-faced Crimsonwings that we put into our breeding aviaries. We've had quite a bit of success already, and our aim now is to really get that bird into second generations.
In the meantime, back at Burundi in Uganda, Benson has netted, photographed and released quite a few examples of the 43 finch species that can be seen in this beautiful rainforest. This is the common waxbill. The black and white mannikin. The fawn-breasted waxbill with its subtle colouring. The bronze mannikin with its small glossy dark green spot that can be seen on its shoulder when the light is right. The green-backed twin spot. The red-headed bluebill. The stunning black-crowned waxbill. And many red-faced Crimsonwing finches have been netted. The cockbird has the red eye patch, and the henbird has the pale yellow eye patch. Plus, many dusky Crimsonwing finches. The cockbirds have more red on the crown of its head than the henbirds. As mentioned earlier, it is said that the dusky Crimsonwings are often seen in the same areas as the Shelley's Crimsonwings. Every month, Benson, in partnership with the ITFC, sends his field reports to the RFCG project team in South Africa, and all the latest data is uploaded onto the RFCG website by William from Rain. The academic field report is prepared by Professor Ernst Kruger, and all the financials are captured by Mark Stewart. The very important on-the-ground support that the Institute of Tropical Forest Conservation provides to the RFCG is invaluable. And this is what Miriam van Heest from the Institute had to share with us.
Well, since there are hopefully more tourists also going to visit us here in Rhodesia, I know that there is a mountain gorilla group habituated on this side of the park. We would like from our side to develop sort of different activities for tourists that make use of the information that ITFC has or is developing. And things like showing a movie about the Shelley Crimsonwing, the mountain gorillas, whatever other things are going on here would be really a nice thing to be able to offer. No, so the one side is the tourist the tourist market. The other one would be indeed local communities, kids in the schools here to have a better understanding of how special the places where they live. I think that is maybe something that in the local community is less of an understanding of the fact that there also some of these little birds are very special for this part of the world and not just the mountain gorilla. And then you could include it in education packages.
Sadly, after many, many months of netting in the Burundi impenetrable forest, not a single Shelley's crimsonwing has either been seen or netted in the area. And it is the sincere belief of the Rare Finch Conservation Group that the species is a lot more threatened than what is currently reflected by BirdLife International. Now let's hear what Australian Russell Kingston has to say about the future management of this pioneering conservation project. Russell is an internationally acclaimed author on finches, an RFCG founder member from Australia who, in 2010, was awarded the coveted Order of Merit Award in Australia for outstanding services to aviculture over the past 40 years.
Reintroduction to the wild of birds that have been bred in captivity is not easy. It is one of the most difficult things that can be undertaken in a conservation program. Success over the years in various parts of the world with different sorts of bird species has been mixed. I know in other parts of the world there have been various raptor releases, parrot releases, pigeon releases. These are all much bigger birds than small passerines, and their requirements are different and their survivability rate is much higher. When the birds are released, we need to know what they're doing, so a thorough knowledge of their habits, the environment they're living in is documented, and then tracking devices have to be placed on the released birds to ensure that we know what they're up to, what they're doing. Tracking devices for small creatures such as a little finch would be, I imagine, need to be very high tech. It needs to be robust because it's going into a very harsh environment with lots of moisture, lots of rain, lots of water. Also lots of thickets. We don't want to fit a bird with something that's going to be easily caught up in the thick brush and undergrowth that we have in these regions where the little Shelley's crimsonwing's coming from. So it's not just a program researching into the birds themselves, but into the technology needed to track these birds and know that the instrument that we're putting on the bird will not endanger the bird and will have sufficient longevity that will enable the tracking to be successful. There also has to be aviaries built to prepare the birds for the re-release. These pre-release aviaries need to be built in situ, and we need to know how the birds are going to react to the environment there, particularly the cold nights and the dampness. So all up, it's not an easy project. No one, I'm sure least of all Eelco and Simon, expected it to be easy, but it's not impossible. And I think that if it is a success, then it'll be a wonderful thing, not just for the bird, but it will enable the Rare Finch Conservation Group to then take those lessons learned and apply them to other species, not just in Africa but around the world.
As with the outstanding work done on the critically endangered mountain gorillas, teaching the young children in the area all about the rarity of the Shelley's crimsonwing finch will hopefully encourage them to become even more conservation conscious, and that it'll ultimately help to attract finch enthusiasts from all over the world. If you would like to support this pioneering and worthy conservation project, then please refer to the Rare Finch Conservation Group website or Facebook profile, or to the donor card inside your DVD cover.